Mr. Doggett.
Hello there, Mr. Ephgrave.
Very formal today. Thought we'd start
Yeah,
formally.
we are, aren't we?
Yeah, we're here again for another episode of More Than Mostly Comedy Podcast.
Yes.
Quite exciting. How are you?
It's very
you okay?
exciting. I'm good, thank you. Yeah, how are you doing?
It's a bit sweaty, but that's because we've just recorded an interview, and I just get a bit sweaty. I get excited when you're there. Makes me
It's nice to see you. It's nice to see other people other than my own family in this bizarre time that we're recording in. So yeah, for anyone listening beyond this current situation, we are recording during the coronavirus.
Shall we say lockdown number 1? Because we
lockdown 1. Yeah, yeah.
The first instalment of this. But
someone in the future is listening to this podcast and going, little did they know there'd be another 4 of these.
They're all dead. It's like the dinosaurs all over again. No, we won't go that bleak.
No.
But we've been trying to turn it to our advantage, haven't we, Glenn? Because last time, obviously, the last episode we did was with Kate Robbins and Norman Lovett, and that was live at our venue, Mostly Comedy.
That's right. Yeah.
But that was recorded pre-lockdown.
Yes.
And we did the links during lockdown, and now what we've decided to do, because we can't do the gigs at the moment, is we try and do a few using Zoom and various other meeting apps, just having a little chat with some comedians and catching up this way. So we spoke to Arthur Smith today, didn't we? Which was
nice.
It
was great. It was really good. And what we did is we had offer tickets. We sold sold tickets for the gig. As it were, and we had an audience there as well, and they were there to listen, and they added questions through the chat, and also previously on Twitter as well. So we've had it's great. So we've had people interacting with it as well, which has been really nice, and it's sort of the next best thing to doing what we started with the live on stage podcast, where we actually had people tweeting and stuff during it. So we've tried to sort of carry that on, but in a virtual way.
And the nice thing was, because this was supposed to be the next gig anyway with Arthur Smith, so it was nice to sort of still keep it going, even though we couldn't actually do it properly. Who needs a venue, Glyn? You don't need a venue.
Who needs a venue? Just have my lounge in your room, whatever room that is.
It's a non-specific room.
Yeah, I was going to say, it is very non-specific.
Yes,
Plant pot.
Yeah, it's my sexy room, where I go for sexy times. I don't. That's horrible. But yeah, so we spoke to Arthur Smith, had a lovely chat, and so when you hear us talking about the questions we had thrown at us, you'll understand that it's because other people were watching. We had quite a good turnout as well, didn't we? There was a few people there. It was a nice experience. It was a nice way to spend the evening.
It really was. Yeah, it was really good, and so people know there will be more. Now we've done one, and we thought that went well, so there will be chances to join in the next one.
We'll
talk more about that at the end.
But exactly. And what a nice person to speak to, Arthur Smith. A legend, a comedy legend. So just the first time I met him, I was you weren't there actually, Glenn, but it was the first Edinburgh we went up to in 2008. And I was having a drink with Paul Harry Allen, a friend of ours who's a comedian.
I was up there though. Where was
you were there? You were just maybe you're in the loo. I don't know. Or we just had we were so sick of each other by that point.
We just went our separate ways.
It was going so badly, and no one was coming.
It really was. Yeah,
we were watching the money just be burnt essentially.
That's right.
We're still paying that off, in fact, aren't we? Edinburgh. So I say paying it off. We're sort of not really paying it off. Is the answer?
We just stopped talking about it.
Yeah, but so I was there with Paul, and then Arthur walked in, and he was like, "All right, Paul, how are you doing?" And I was like, "That's Arthur Smith," because it's like at that point we didn't know any comedians other than Paul really, and Arthur is like so distinctive, the most distinctive sort of voice that and face He's like the face of Edinburgh. And he says in the interview he's been to every Edinburgh bar too since 1977, which is a bit crazy, really.
I remember seeing him on a moving sofa. Driving around Edinburgh, and he used to do interviews on his sofa while he went with other people while driving around Edinburgh, which was one of the many things he's done up in Edinburgh. But that was just an memory of seeing him.
That was just an acid flashback.
Did that happen?
I don't think
maybe
that really
didn't happen. Maybe it didn't. No,
you'd had too many disco biscuits, and you were. I
think I have.
You were spinning.
Yeah.
But so I mean, let's stop talking about Arthur and let's just talk to Arthur. Really, let's hand over to us earlier on this evening. So we are currently sitting, in a virtual sense, with Arthur Smith. Hello, Arthur.
Good evening.
Hello.
How are you doing? You all right?
I'm extremely handsome and trying to avoid all the cliches that are flowing around us at the moment.
All the viruses as well.
Yeah.
How are you coping with lockdown at the moment? Have you gone mad yet? Or
Well, I had a thing. I did a show a few years ago called Mindlessness, which was a kind of parody wellness program, at which I invented the phrase and indeed the way of life, which is CBA, which is can't be asked. And I must admit, I've had quite a bad bouts of CBA.
Yeah.
You know, there's so many things you could be doing. So everybody Zoom and TikTok and podcasts and quizzes and, you know, frankly, I've CBA, I'm afraid. I've had quite a lot of that. But I did manage to, today I've already sent an email and cut my toenails. So
that's the week done, isn't it, really?
That's it.
pretty
What an
much,
achievement. Yeah.
But also I'm quite, you know, I'm thankful that I'm not in, you know, some terrible situation like some people are. There's sort of 10 in one place and I've got open air around me. I'm an expert on Wandsworth and Tooting Common, and I've been doing a lot of strange dreams. Have you had that?
A little bit.
Yeah.
I think that's quite common, isn't it? It's just such a strange situation to be in, and like you're not really expending any like the mental energy you normally would.
Yes, I dreamt the other day that I got in a car or something, and it went all the way, and the land stopped, and there was all this water everywhere flowing about.
Yeah.
And then I thought, is that real? Does that happen? What's that called?
It's a beach.
Is that a beach?
Beach, but what's all the water? There's so much of it.
Oh, I see. What, the road just sort of...
Sea.
That's the one, isn't it? Yeah.
I think so. Is that real?
I'm not
think
sure.
that's a conspiracy.
I think it
theory,
is.
I don't know, but it was a very vivid dream. Oh, yeah, and it's hard not to. And I've done some extraordinary things. Now, look, I've just bought these today.
Oh, lovely.
See that?
Viennese whirls. Viennese whirls for the
I haven't had a Viennese whirl. That was like the best thing you could ever have when I was a kid. A Mr. Kipling Viennese whirl.
Yeah, yeah.
Really looking forward to chomping through that later on.
Yeah,
and some retro desserts.
Small things have to find our way. That's what we have to do at the moment.
That's been my thing. Food, I think that's been the one.
Yeah,
Keep
I've
me
put
going.
on weight.
Yeah,
clearly put on weight. Although I bought an electric drum kit because I play drums a bit, and I thought rather than annoy the neighbours, but have an excuse to sort of do something a bit physical, and I've been really enjoying that actually. So that's been helping a bit. But yeah, I don't know. You
haven't been running 17 miles a day or doing your own podcasts all the time or constantly zooming and doing TikTok and
this is the first thing we've done in weeks.
Really. It's taken us 8 weeks to do this, so yeah, that shows how much we've been doing. Yeah.
Well, it does make you wonder how comedy is going to change, and obviously, a bunch of people crowded together in a theatre is not going to be happening anytime very soon.
No, I know.
So, you know, we have to find a new way forward to sending the laughs into the universe.
It's a weird one, isn't it? Have you done any online gigs, where you've done material so far?
Yes, I have. I've done one, and I've done two even. Or was that just a podcast? I can't remember. I was definitely done
Dream
one.
Again.
And I've done two. I've just remembered. Not that it really matters. And I mean, one interesting thing is that obviously you don't hear mass laughter, which you would, assuming you're being funny.
Yeah.
So you don't hear anyone laugh really. Although on one of them they'd patched in about 7 or 8 members of the audience. So you deliver the funny line, and then there was a pause, and then there was a sort of little smatterings of laughter from around the country that didn't really amount to normal laughter, but you know.
It's almost worse, isn't it? It's almost like a pity laugh, isn't it? Because it doesn't come straight away either. It's like a sort of gap.
I know. I don't. Why does it have to be like that? Because when you're on the phone and you're speaking to someone, there's not any pause, is there, before they start speaking back? Why can't the internet sort it out so that when I finish this sentence, there isn't an embarrassing pause?
We'll get our scientists working on that one for you. Hopefully we'll fix it. But yeah, I mean, like I was listening to someone talk on, I think it was Question Time, like yesterday, and just saying about, you know, when a theatre's going to be able to open again, because you just can't socially distance. Like you need about 20%, only 20% of the audience there, and it's just not going to get a reaction. It's not going to make the money it needs to make. It's So it's all
But
going to be
I'm thinking people, when eventually we are released and that is permissible, I'm guessing there'll probably be a big upsurge of people going out and about to shows. Or maybe the whole nature of comedy is transformed, just like with theatre. The theatre, it's going to probably have to have a bit of a rethink.
Yeah, that's it, yeah. And it's sort of interesting, like I've been watching, say, like Have I Got News For You, and watching how they're approaching it and how things sort of start off a bit awkward and then they get a bit more, on top of it. But it is just adjusting to a new, well, for so many people, isn't it? For anyone, so many people having to work in different ways.
And I had another thing that I'm trying hard not to do too much it's you can't really not. It's such a brilliant program, the Donald Trump reality show.
Oh, that's the most far-fetched thing I've ever seen in my life, to be fair. But yeah,
I'm currently reading a book about him. I don't know if that's the best thing to be reading right now for your mental health.
Read what you want.
Yeah, but it is just utterly crazy. There was a thing I was reading about something about when he phoned up Putin to congratulate him on the election, and he was given like cue cards, and the first one said in block capitals, "Do not congratulate him on the election. You can't do that." And it was the first thing he said. It's just extraordinary. The man is. The drinking detergent and stuff. If you drink detergent, you certainly won't die of the coronavirus. But it's what.
I'm reminded of a joke I've written a while back. I remember them jokes where I said, talking of bleach, I feel sorry for bleach because when you see written on it, seriously thick, and I feel sorry for that bleach. And to me, that is domestos abuse.
Hey, there it is.
Here's another joke. Knock, knock.
Who's there?
Who's there?
Deliver.
Deliver who? Hey.
Just leave it on the step, mate, all right?
I've been using Deliveroo quite a lot, if I'm honest, just because you get sick of your own food, don't you, really? No.
Well, what I've discovered, because the flat we live at is got the rather ridiculous number of A05, right. But just 2 doors down, in fact, but not in an obvious place, is A05A. And the 2 guys in A05A are always getting Deliveroo. And it's always sent to us first.
Right.
And I'm now thinking I shouldn't pass it on. Fuck it. I'll just see what every night brings
exactly.
from the Deliveroo arbitrary company.
Yeah, a bit of excitement.
Surprise.
A little bit different. Yeah. The other things like Edinburgh obviously been cancelled as it had to be. I sort of wonder how that is going to come back, because it's all about being in like tiny rooms, underground. It's not like good for the health of the best of times.
It's the most sort of compact version of theatre, isn't it, that there is, really?
Well, it's the biggest arts festival in the world.
Yeah.
And having been there every year bar 2 since 1977, I will be weeping at the imaginary foot of Arthur's Seat. I think, because Edinburgh, I've measured out my life in Edinburgh festivals, as a lot of comedians have in a way. If I have to think, well, what was I doing that year? Oh, I know, that year I was doing that show, though, therefore I was doing that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I shall really miss Edinburgh a lot. And I shall miss the income from all the gigs that I've had cancelled.
Yeah, that's it, isn't it? Yeah, that's crazy. But
I'm sure there's a lot of comedians. I at least can do the odd voiceover or something down the line, but I'm sure there's a lot of comedians who've just got nothing now.
Well, that's it, yeah. And, we've had to cancel all our dates. Obviously this helps, but yeah, it's crazy. And like you said, Edinburgh, I was going to do a show about my dad this year because he passed away last year, and I was so sort of aimed and ready to go with it. And you're like, oh, it's not. So part of me goes, great, I've got another year to write it, but that's not going to happen, is it? It's clear.
Yeah, but it's not just Edinburgh, is it? Then it's all the previews leading up to that. It's all the other nights you do where you're preparing material. So everything, isn't it? It's just kind of gone.
Yeah, it's a sad thing, and all the other festivals as well. Glastonbury and. But I'm keeping the Balham Festival going.
Excellent.
But there's only me at it, and I am the only audience member, really, apart from the missus upstairs.
So you're sort of covered. You're all right.
But today I've done some few good arbitrary things. Today I made a list of the most famous Americans I've ever met.
Oh, okay.
And it's quite good. I won't do them all, but I'll pick a few out. Stephen Sondheim, Gwyneth Paltrow, Arthur Miller, and Bill Clinton. There's 4, for example.
That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, Bill Clinton.
Arthur Miller's a good one as well. That's sort of.
I know, disappointingly, I don't have a great story to go with it, but I kind of had lunch with Arthur Miller because of someone I knew him, and I went to lunch at his place in New England, and he was utterly charming, but I had the most terrible hangover. This is from my drinking days, and I couldn't think of anything to say, and I was desperately trying to avoid mentioning Marilyn Monroe as well, obviously, because even though he was one of the great playwrights of the 20th century, all anyone ever wanted to ask him about was being married to Marilyn Monroe.
Wow. What year was that? Do you remember?
I'll tell you what, that was 2000, because that very year I was in New York, and I was in the World Trade Center on September the 11th, 2000. But of course, it was the year after that. But I remember at the time thinking, I was there this time. Oh, yeah, that's where I was. I was actually in a year before it happened, obviously.
Yeah. Great. Yeah, it's great. I saw people talking about like the most famous people they just sort of bumped into, and I think the one of the best ones I saw was Quentin Tarantino. He was in the vintage magazine shop in Soho. And I went downstairs, the room downstairs, and there was this guy flicking through film posters. And I thought, I know him, I can't think of him. And he sort of gave away. And I was like, fucking hell, it's Quentin Tarantino. Insane. So that was quite
Did he wave at you, did you say?
Yeah, but like, obviously he knew who I was. No, I mean, just like a sort of like, he's like, fucking hell, it's David Ephgrave. He's massive in Hertfordshire. Yeah. But, that was quite exciting.
What's your one then, Glenn?
I'm just racking my brain trying to think of any Suggs. I remember seeing Suggs. And it was, I mean, there's been many, but I'm trying to think of like
I've got a Suggs story. I once did a radio program, a couple of radio programs with Suggs, and we went back when he was like 10 or 11. He'd gone to Wales for a year, and had been in the primary school. Was it Tenby or something like that, in Wales? And we went back there, and the school, they were welcoming us back. And of course, he was famous, Suggs. And we went into morning assembly, and the teachers had arranged for all the kids to start singing I've been driving in. I know, is that, wait a minute, what's
that's Madness. Yeah,
that's Suggs, yeah, Madness.
And all the kids started singing that, which was about the sweetest thing I've ever seen, I think.
Amazing. You used to be in a band, didn't you, Arthur?
I was in a band for a couple of years, I was in a band we were called the Rolling Stones, do you know?
I
was in the Beatles. I used to play the drums, but I thought they're not going anywhere, so I left. I was in a band called, we were first of all called The Results, and we were kind of a bit of a kind of slightly comedy punk band, Probably my hero then was Ian Dury. That's what I kind of wanted to sound like. And we did do a couple of Ian Dury numbers.
Right.
And we played around London and for a couple of years. But then we all fell out over money. And I went into comedy, really.
Yeah. Were you the singer, did you say?
I was, yeah. I mean, I could sing all right, but, frankly, it was a bit like the classic, me filling in bits between the numbers were getting longer than the numbers, and I was getting laughs, and then understandably the rest of the band were pissed off. But maybe I should put them out. I've still got a few recordings. We wrote our own songs as well.
Right, yeah.
And in fact, I came third in the NME New Songwriters Competition of 1978, I think.
That's pretty impressive.
That's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Third.
I was in a band as well, and we supported Slade, but it was without Noddy Holder, so that was quite disappointing. I don't think that is Slade, really.
Was there a sort of pretend Noddy Holder?
He was like a session singer, and he was good. And they had Dave Hill was there, and
why was Noddy Holder not there though? Because he's still around, isn't he?
Yeah, but he just stopped doing it, didn't he? I think he retired. Oh. Although we did a gig together, didn't we? We used to run a 60s show, Arthur, and I sort of was a musical director on it and played bass, and we did a party for some sort of record function thing.
We did.
And Noddy Holder was right at the front, sort of pissed, singing along and dancing
with Dave Clark from Dave Clark 5 randomly.
Blimey, yeah. And I'm feeling
yes.
glad all over.
That's when we were
That's
so worried because our show, we had at that time we had a corporate gig, and then we had the show that was called Glad All Over. We'd called it that, and I was wearing a T-shirt with Glad All Over written on it, and I suddenly realised I hadn't.
He's like notoriously litigious as well. He's like he doesn't like it. Although I mean, I hope he doesn't listen to this podcast. But he did look a bit like a Klingon. He had this like slightly frozen face. It was a bit but no, he was nice.
Still alive?
I think so.
I don't know. This was a few years ago, so
I think he's still going. Yeah. But it's very surreal when you're like singing like songs and there's Noddy Holder with like the most distinctive voice you could imagine singing back at you. It's very, very, very surreal. Very bizarre.
Yeah.
Well, I've met a few famous rock. I met Elvis Costello in a pub in the Fulham Palace Road, just when he was like at the height of his. And I went up and said, "Oh, are you Elvis Costello?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "I bet you get a lot of twats like me coming up and say that, don't you?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Do you want a fag?" He said, "Yeah." And that was it. I got 3 yeses from Elvis Costello.
Brilliant.
That's not bad going. I met Paul McCartney once and he called me man twice, which I thought was quite cool.
I met him once, and I did a joke about, didn't we used to be in a band together? And he said, yeah, it was a skiffle band, and he was utterly charming.
Yeah, he was very nice when I met him as well.
Although it's better off to tell stories of celebrities who were real arseholes and wankers.
Yeah. Do you have any you'd want to share? Or
I didn't get on very well with Danny Minogue.
Danny Minogue.
Is this in your Neighbours days?
Yeah. Home and Away, wasn't it? Was it Home and Away that she wasn't the Neighbours? She wasn't good enough for Neighbours.
She's the budget Minogue.
She was. She was the Home and Away one, wasn't she?
Yeah, but I once had to interview her on Loose Ends on Radio 4, and she was annoyed about something else, some previous interview. So it was just like the classic. So, Danny, tell us about your new single. It's good. And why have you called it whatever it is? Good title. And it was like, she was not going to answer anything in more than more than 4 words, probably.
Right. Which is
a bit hard going.
Yeah. I don't you find though that the nicest, often the biggest people, the most successful people, the most well-known people are the nicest. Like McCartney's a really good example, but just really
and really I'll tell you, I met. On some more on my list of Tony Bennett. He was utterly charming, as was Martha of Martha and the Vandellas.
That's cool.
Nora Ephron, and Robin Williams was a bit of a laugh as well.
Robin Williams. Did you?
I did a gig with him. He used to do this in the 80s. It would have been, I suppose.
Wow.
He'd turn up wherever he was in the world, coked out of his head. And what he wanted to do was just go to whatever the biggest, nearest comedy club was and go on and do a turn, because I think he just loved being on stage. So he turned up at the Comedy Store when I was on, and, and obviously Don Wald said, yeah, of course, go on. And he was on before me, so I can genuinely say that Robin Williams was my warm-up act.
Excellent.
Was he good? Was he good that night?
Well, actually, he seemed to be having a bit of a trouble with the microphone, and he was obviously just improvising, and he was obviously off his head on coke. So he was sporadically brilliantly funny. But then I remember him saying something about how amazed he'd been to find that in London there were black people with English accents. This had never occurred to him.
Right.
I suppose it's sort of understandable. So he started doing like Cockney black voice, which was, which didn't really get any laughs. It was got an English accent, really.
Yeah. It's such a shame about him, though, isn't it? I still sort of every so often I remember watching a film, and it's so sad because he was just such an inspirational performer, really. Ultimately.
Did you actually get to talk to him?
Yeah, and he was. Yeah, I mean, he had a bit of an entourage and whatnot, but it was only a kind of quick hello. But he was charming. I did get to have a chat with Bill Clinton once,
right?
When he was at the Hay on Wye Literary Festival, which I used to go to, and he, because that's a huge event. It was just after he finished being president, although they're still called president. Yeah. So he blew into what is a tiny little town, Hay on Wye in Wales, on the border, and and there were suddenly before he got there were all these guys in suits talking into their sleeves, and there supposedly was genuinely a sniper on the roof of the primary school. But anyway, and he was on in the same venue as me. I was doing my first ever Leonard Cohen show.
Right.
And he was on before me in the same venue. So again, I can say Bill Clinton was my warm-up act. But anyway, and I wasn't allowed in to do a sound check to set the sound up for my show because, you know, they had all like secret agents and whatnot keeping it clear.
Yeah.
And then, so I attended his talk, which was about conflict resolution. At the end of it, there were questions, and I said, look, how long are you going to do here? Because I've got my show and it's already an hour after the starting time.
Right.
And I subsequently discovered I was nearly at that point bundled to the floor by the Secret Service.
Did he find it funny? Did he actually?
Yeah, he did actually. And then as he came out, I understand that there was a bit of a crowd queuing up for me singing Leonard Cohen or something. Because I then, later on in the evening, after I'd done my show, I was invited to some swanky do where Bill Clinton was the guest of honour. And he did a kind of walking down the line saying hello to people. And he got to me, and I was with a Radio 4 producer who was desperately trying to get the thing going. Anyway, I said, I've got a bone to pick with you, Bill, because I had to go on an hour late because of you. And he said, oh, well, you're Arthur. And he'd seen this, and he'd heard Leonard Cohen. I said, yes. He goes, Suzanne takes you down. So me and him then sang through Suzanne by Leonard Cohen. And then I said, well, you've done me now, you can move on. And then the woman who was the Radio 4 producer, he said, are you okay? She said, oh, my batteries are low.
Oh.
And he said, oh, well, Arthur doesn't seem like a low batteries kind of a guy. So that was my write-up from Bill Clinton.
There's your compliment.
And then since then, he's not been in touch. I've not had a
Unbelievable
text or anything.
No. Yeah.
But it was interesting to see the way he just finished being president and he swarmed into that room, and I think you could hear women swooning. And he was quite charismatic, I have to say.
And it must be because obviously such an extraordinary job to do, but it must just affect the rest of your life, and also your perspective of the world must change entirely,
Yeah, and of course, and you're always still president, and they still keep the same close protection and whatnot. So, I always feel a bit sorry for the Queen that she can't ever just go somewhere and just nip to the shops or go and have a sit in St James's Park and have a fag or something.
Yeah.
Although apparently she did. I'm told that on VE Day, which since this 80th year, is it? Since it
75th or 80th,
recently. But apparently, just on VE Day, she was allowed out, kind of, by herself, just sort of, because there's so many people about. No one's expected to see the Queen, and that, as I understand it, that was the only time she's ever been kind of where she could have just got the bus to Brixton and or done whatever she wanted.
And it's bizarre because someone like her, I think, she marks the change of time, doesn't she? Because she's been Queen for so long and been through so many sort of crucial changes in life and events and met so many people. It's kind of extraordinary, really.
Yes, you wonder. I mean, I know a guy at the BBC whose his job essentially, he's sort of retired, but his job is to coordinate what happens at the BBC when she dies, which, as you can imagine, is going to be. They're not going to just sort of say, put it on the news, are they? It'll be a bit more than that.
Is that his only job?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
that's a job, isn't it, to have?
Well, he's sort of retired, I suppose. Yeah, he's just always off the end of the line,
just waiting. Waiting for the money to come in, waiting for that to happen. It's an interesting job to have.
I was going to ask you as well, Arthur, because obviously one of the things you're really, really known for is Grumpy Old Men. But didn't that? I mean, that started something like 2003. So weren't you you were about 49 or 50 when you started that? Were you? Yeah,
you mean I wasn't old enough to be a grumpy old man?
Yeah,
to be grumpy, but you couldn't be an old man, surely.
Yeah, well, that was interestingly at the time. It was the premise of the program was it was actually by old they meant kind of there was some spurious survey about men between the age of 45 and 55 or something are most likely to be miserable cunts. And in fact, I know a couple of older comedians who were a bit pissed off they weren't invited on.
Really?
And then I heard of, and then someone like, I gather Griff Rhys-Jones turned it down because he didn't want anyone to say he might be old. So, it was... But I mean, I mean, that was the thing that, ironically, I'm best known for, probably because I'm not particularly grumpy, to be honest, but I can be if you want me to be. For fuck's sake, get a grip, man.
Yeah, if the money's right, I'll be grumpy for you.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
How I mean, you sort of said you started comedy really in the band. How did you start out? What was what?
Well, actually, in comedy, I was. I'll tell you what, I'm going to do something really shocking here that you used to be able to do at gigs, but you can't do anymore. I'm going to have a fag.
Oh,
That's fine. That's okay.
It's like the old days.
Yeah.
Well, hang on, if I can find a lighter. But this is in the days when you used to have a fag when you went on stage.
Yeah.
Lighter here somewhere. This is my hilarious looking for the light. Right, I'm going to have to stand up, put my hand in the pocket.
It's all right.
Yes.
I've got my tourniquet and my syringe of heroin here, so I'm
just
already
already
Yeah.
Constant.
But so I was originally in a student review in 1977. This is before I was even in the band. And we went up to the Edinburgh Festival and did a show, predictably to 3 people to start with. And then we went up every year. And in those days, there was no stand-up comedy at the Edinburgh Fringe. That didn't come till 82 or something.
Right.
And when it did start coming in, and when I first saw Alexis Sale at the comic strip, I thought, this is interesting. And so I started doing really stand-up. It was a bit coinciding with the end of the band in the, this would have been the early 80s. And then I got to do a lot of comparing, and then I started. And there were beginning to be more and more clubs building up from the alternative comedy scene, or alternative cabaret, as it was called then. And then I ended up, emceeing at the Comedy Store one weekend, and Jongleurs, which was the other big club at the time, on the other weekend. And, that was where I all started, really, as a stand-up. But I'd been in this review playing characters, and although I was always better, really, just as a version of myself.
Was it easy to earn a living, at the beginning, or was it?
Well, that was another thing. People didn't really do it at that time to earn a living,
no.
But you did used to get paid. I mean, it's kind of ironic because it coincided with the arrival of Mrs. Thatcher, really, alternative comedy. It was a bit like, comedy's version of punk.
Yeah. And
which always seemed a strange irony because, of course, Thatcher was, she was all for, like, get on your bike, like Norman Tebbit. That's what a comedian was doing. It was just himself or herself getting up and trying to find a job.
Yeah.
And, it suited the individual investigation of the world. But, of course, everyone on the scene then hated Thatcher. Yeah. Just like most of the regular guys were all fans of Thatcher, the sort of Stan Baldwins and the Jim Broadbent,
Jim Bowen, is it?
Davidson.
Oh, yeah.
Right, Jim Bowen came. They were all called Jim back then. Yeah.
There were fewer names around back in the 70s. You just had to take what you were given.
There weren't so many invented then.
Yeah. So from comedy, where did you get into the writing stuff then as well? Because obviously you've written.
Yeah. Well, when I was a boy, my mother was a great fan of the theatre, and she was a great reader of novels and poetry, and she turned me on to that. And we used to take us to the National Theatre had just opened then, and she'd go and queue and get tickets. And then at university, I went to the University of East Anglia, which had a sort of reputation for doing creative writing as almost as part of your learning. So, say instead of writing about the form of the sonnet, you could write a sonnet.
Yeah. And
I studied drama there, and I just, I went to a lot of plays. So I thought, oh, hey, I'll write a play.
Right.
And I wrote a few plays.
You were nominated for an Olivier, weren't you, for one of them, which is quite impressive.
That's right. Yeah. And I remember going to that. And the one, actually, this was an evening with Gary Lineker, the play. And it was running in the West End. It was doing really well. And it was getting huge laughs and well reviewed. And then the one that won that year was, frankly, wasn't very good, and no one really noticed it.
Right.
So ever after, I thought, oh fuck, I can't be asked for the Royal shows.
Yeah, exactly.
Not unless they're paying me to compare them.
Well, yeah, I saw. Didn't you turn down the Perrier lifetime achievement? Was it or something?
Yeah, I did because I don't know, awards are a bit annoying, and then I accepted it a couple of years later because there was a cash prize that went with it. Yeah, I mean, everyone's an award. I mean, everyone now is a multi-award-winning comedian, aren't they? I mean, how many hundreds of awards have you won?
Apart from us, I think. We're like the control that measures the rest of them.
Just invent an award, set up some website.
I won Best Band in Hertfordshire with my band in 1998.
It's
an award. Everyone knows that.
Exactly. The one and only time it ran. I just thought,
is it no longer the best band in Hertfordshire going?
No, I think it peaked. I think, but after us, they were like, "There's no way."
So many
things better.
I was going to say to have had a look, see if there's any questions on the side.
I was just going to say, we've got a message from Pete, because for the people who are listening who aren't here now, when you listen back to it, because we're doing this through Zoom, other meeting apps are available. We've got some things being sent through from the people who are listening in from our Mostly Comedy audience. And we've got Pete there, who's a regular, said, I used to work backstage at Hay, was madless when the name like Bill Clinton was appearing. So, yeah, it's proof. It's proof that it's true. I've also got some questions, actually, Arthur, that we had sent in via the old Twitter. Let's find a good one. Well, this one's relevant to now. Who was the last person you shook hands with? That's John O'West asked that. Do you remember?
That's a good question.
Wasn't Bill Clinton, was it?
Well, obviously, I suppose my partner upstairs, although every morning I say, good morning.
Very formal relationship you have.
But other than that, I think I was doing a gig at the Dulwich Hamlet Comedy Club, and I shook hands with Alex Haddow at the end as I was leaving. Okay. And that's probably it. That was, it's 8-9 weeks ago. What does hands feel like? I can't remember.
Well, mine feel like an old woman's hands now because of the amount of washing you do. It's just like
different. They're all going to feel different.
Are you locked up? You locked up alone or
I'm with my wife who's downstairs. We've got a house. Well, it was my dad's house actually, so it's quite nice. We've got a garden and stuff. It's actually nice having her working at home.
Must be nice. Must be nice having.
Yeah, but you've got kids.
I've got two young kids, and my wife. So me and my wife and my two young kids. It's been it's been fun. To say in a kind of strained way. Yeah, it's been.
I had a friend who's married with children and quite a small house, and I asked how she said she was doing. She said, "I'm slowly becoming a bald, skint, jobless." Fat murderer. I don't think she'd actually done the murder at this point. But
she already was a murderer. And then...
There's so many temptations there. That's the trouble. Yeah.
I'm gradually becoming passively stoned because the people next door, they permanently smoking weed. And you literally wake up and you're like, can I smoke a really strong smell of weed? It's extraordinary. It's quite nice in a way.
It calms you down, doesn't it, a bit? That's good.
It does, yeah.
Well, I mean, I feel a bit sorry for all, a lot of these drug dealers have been they've been furloughed, haven't they?
That's it. Yeah.
There's no one doing benefits for them.
No, that's it. Yeah.
And it's not like you can go into a toilet cubicle and buy, scores and you can't even do it.
Not in your own toilet, you can't. No. This is it.
I've got some more questions here. I'll try another one. What have we got? This is from Oliver Jeeves. If you could be any sort of vegetable, what vegetable would you be? We asked the hot topics here. These are the big questions.
Yeah.
Yeah. What vegetable would you be, Arthur? If you were one?
I'd like to be some asparagus. Tall and lean and green with a fruity little top and a big smile.
That'd be nice. And then if we have it, we know because when we go for a wee, the smell, the clear asparagus.
Exactly. Well, you get double value for money then from the asparagus. It's in season at the moment, in as far as that exists. Has anyone gone off fruit picking yet?
No, not yet, but probably will have to. I think
that's a good point. Actually, there'll be a lot of fruit out there that's not being picked yet, isn't there? That's a thing. Who's picking that fruit?
And I haven't still got them. Yeah,
that's something to look forward to.
Yeah.
I was going to say, because you were talking about because you write poetry as well, don't you, Arthur? You're
sometimes, yes.
And I always really love when you come to Mostly that you're not afraid to be poignant. You're not afraid to not always go for the laugh.
It's interesting. I quite often now, if I'm doing well, unless you're playing just a load of pissed drunks at 1 a.m, but usually I like to do a couple of poems in the course of my set.
Yeah.
And I'm always surprised because they're not funny poems necessarily, a couple of them, but people always clearly appreciate them, and it lends another dimension to an evening. And you come to realise as well that comedy is usually words very carefully chosen for an effect, which of course is exactly what poetry is.
Yeah. It's like, comedy, music, poetry, they've all got a rhythm, haven't they? And it's essential to it. Do you think you would have been able to do that sort of thing when you started out, or is it something that, as you've become better known and
I've always liked poetry, and I've always been interested in it and read it a lot. But when I started out, there were a few poets, but I mean, they would have been doing comic poems of their own, like Phil Jupitus, who used to be Porky the poet. Jenny Eclair started out as a poet. So there were poetry acts, although they tended to be kind of fairly rhythmic, rhyming, hitting the punchline on the rhyme. But no, there wasn't anything. There was rarely something a bit more gentler. Although I don't know, John Hegley, actually, he was a big star in the early days there of the thing as well.
Yeah,
I think poetry and comedy are undoubtedly linked.
Yeah,
it's like John Cooper Clarke, isn't it?
Something like that. Yeah. I once watched a cup final with John Cooper.
Did you?
Amazing.
It was a delicious afternoon. The man who, all his words are so wonderfully chosen. All the time. He's a real star, Johnny Cooper Clarke.
Yeah. And he did mostly, like Glenn was saying, last year. And I mean, he's a really good gag teller as well. And he's just got a great He's just brilliant. And he's such a nice bloke as well. Really, really nice guy.
Yeah. He's generous and friendly. And let's talk about someone who we hate, though. That's much more interesting to people watching and listening.
I know, the gossip, isn't it?
I'm trying to think. Oh, look at Glenn's got some wine.
I switched from. I had it there, and I was like, do you know what? I'm going to start the wine because that's. It's been most nights. To be fair, it's kind of my one saving grace. In the end of the day, it's like, right, wine time.
I got vodka.
Well, I don't reckon that the world's full of drunks now. That the liver disease is kind of getting out of hand.
It is, isn't it?
That and obesity.
Drunk near us, who we see everything kind of wanders by the front of the house at midday. Obviously pissed out of his head, and he occasionally gets arrested. But he's obviously he's having fun while he's doing it.
Yeah, that's it.
Who really inspires you, Arthur? Are there people that really inspire you in life as be it performer, be it anything?
T.S. Eliot, Greta Thunberg.
Yes, yeah.
Barack Obama.
Yeah.
And Anthea Turner.
Save the best for last. Barack Obama, now there was a statesman. That was someone who could speak well and you trusted and you believed in. I mean,
the irony, the difference between him and the man who came afterwards is so insanely in every possible department. I mean, Obama, the thing about him was he was funny, he was witty. He was thoughtful. He was eloquent. He could sing. He could do gags. He was empathetic. He was the absolute opposite of everything the guy who's come after is. Because there's one thing about Trump. He has absolutely no sense of humour, really, does he?
No.
I mean, if he's hilariously funny, of course, but never deliberately.
Yeah. It's literally a thing you can see. You can't imagine him laughing at a thing or listening to anyone, can you? It's a complete narcissistic.
Very strange, isn't it?
But how can so many Americans vote for that? I mean, mind you, we got Boris, but that's bad. But
he's like the watered down version, isn't he? So
There was a time when George W. Bush was like bad, and now I quite welcome him. I find that with like prime ministers as well. The ones you think, God, David Cameron or whatever. And now, in a weird way, I'm not a Tory, but I'd rather have him right now, than Boris or something. It's just such a, and I think it tells as well. Someone like Boris. I mean, obviously, when he got the COVID-19 thing, my instant thought was, but has he really? And I know he obviously did. But that's how little you trust someone that you think.
Well, he just blusters and lies. I was on a radio panel game with him on Radio 4 about 20 years ago or something.
Right.
And I remember calling him a Tory bigot, and he said, "Oh, I say that's a bit strong." And looking back, I'm quite proud of it.
Yeah. You should be. That's so good.
Funny enough, me and Glenn did a thing locally in Hitchin for like a Rotary thing, and it's at the venue where we do mostly comedy now. And it was with Peter Lilly that they wanted us to do. You know the Who song, "Pictures of Lily." Which is about wanking.
Yeah,
so there's a good start.
Not that they were aware of that, but yeah.
No, well, he wasn't.
He wasn't.
We were asked to do it. We were asked to do this thing, and it was just a terrible idea. And he came out at the end, sort of did a cameo. And he phoned us up the day before because he was really worried about it, because he'd heard what the song was about. And the terrible thing was, so we did this event, and at the end he comes on, you're not expecting him to be there, gets a big laugh, round of applause, and he walked off the stage, got in his car and was gone. So by the time he went off, he'd already gone. Didn't say thank you, didn't say... And, you just think, well... There's no wonder, that's clearly not a good person.
And we spent a lot of money on that routine as well. We bought cardboard cutouts of his face. We had his face printed on our T-shirts. The whole song was pictures of Lily, and it was all pictures of Lily's face, wasn't it? His face all over everything.
And then he comes out with a mask and takes it off.
And then he took it off. That was the reveal.
Good game.
But we helped him bloody get in. And
I'll tell you what. Another celebrity I didn't get on with at all was Engelbert Humperdinck. Remember him?
Yes.
He was meant to be again on Loose Ends on Radio 4, and he turned up and he thought he was being interviewed by Mariella Frostrup, and he was told it was me. Right. And he just didn't like the look of me. And he just turned and fucked off. Really? Without even, I said, well, I'm sorry. And he just... but then it actually turned out rather well because Ross Noble, who you'll know, was on the programme.
Yeah.
And we agreed, me and the producer, because it was live then, we couldn't do anything else. We agreed that I would ask the questions I was going to ask Engelbert Humperdinck to Ross Noble, who, of course, is a brilliant improviser, completely got away with it.
Brilliant.
Engelbert Humperdinck famously kept Strawberry Fields Forever off the number one spot.
Did he?
Strawberry Fields Forever and Penny Lane, double A side. It was the first Beatles single in a long time to not get to number one because Please Release Me held it off. And that's like, my wife has just come in with a beer, which is nice. So
look at that! See, you felt.
See,
she's.
But Engelbert Humperdinck, Christ.
Apparently, when he was on Desert Island Discs, he picked 4 of his own songs.
Well, there's a sign, isn't there? Come on! Just fucking hell. I'll go for another question on the sheet here. And if people who are listening in want to ask a question, please stick one in the box.
Yeah, but bear in mind, I want to have a piss.
I was going to say, we should let you go soon.
We are, yeah.
I'll ask one then that's on here. So the question said, hello, the first interview I saw you in, you were asked something about changing your name, which you answered that you were going to call yourself Captain Wankerman. Did this interview ever exist, or am I remembering something that never happened?
No, you are remembering something that's absolutely correct. When I joined Equity, which was de rigueur, when the Actors Union, you couldn't have 2 people with the same name. And my name is Brian Arthur Smith. So my partner, old friends, and call me Brian still. But I couldn't. There presumably already was a Brian Smith. So they said, well, what alternative name do you want? And I put 2 down. I put Arthur Smith because it was my middle name, and people had known me as Arthur too. And I thought that would be good. My main, I put Captain Wanker, but they refused to let me have that. Presumably, there may have already been a Captain Wanker. I don't know, but I'm quite glad because it probably would have been a bit of a pain being Captain Wanker for the rest of my life.
Sort of ceases to be funny after a while. You explained it a million times.
Especially if I wanted to play Hamlet or something.
A friend of mine used to work for the Wine Society, and there was a guy called a Captain Bastard that used to phone up. Amazing.
That's not real, is it?
Well, that's quite a good game. People with names appropriate to. Because I used to have a swimming teacher called Mr. Whale, I remember.
Names appropriate to their job, they can't be real. There's a question here from Pete, who's listening at the moment. He says, as Mayor of Balham, what's the first thing you'll relax from lockdown?
Yes, good question, because we have lockdown. I'm thinking of relaxing the laws that allow people from Clapham into Balham. Because I've normally not allowed the bastards from Clapham to come down into Balham. But I think part of the COVID-19 scene is that we've all got to love each other a bit more.
Yes.
And I'm going to try and love the fucking bastards from Clapham, but never anyone from north of the River Thames. I'm sorry. North Londoners, you know, in North London have little blue plaques commemorating famous people. In South London, we had big yellow signs saying, "Did you see this murder?" That's a gag, obviously.
Yeah. Also, a question from Stephen. Arthur, do you need a van? Do you need a van?
Sadly not, but if he wants to send one anyway, why not?
Okay, not like a stretch limo or anything, a van.
Just a van, yeah.
No, I can't. I sailed through my driving test. That's why I failed it.
And also, it's quite nice. Lindsay Murray Gray said, "This is great."
That's nice. Thank you.
That's nice to know. We're pleased.
Lindsay is great too.
She is.
We should let you go soon, really, Arthur. But
I want to eat me Viennese world.
I'm very jealous.
Is that your reward?
Yeah.
But I believe you've got. I'll do a bit of a plug. You've got a fairly new book out, haven't you, at the moment?
Yes, that's right. Some of the stories I've said this evening are in it, and there's various poems and rants and reportage and stories and anecdotes. And at the time, I bet Nigella Lawson once £200 she wouldn't eat a jar of pickled eggs.
Did she do it?
Well, you'll have to buy the book to find out.
There's another thing I noticed as well, that your Bal and Bash series is on been back on Radio 4 Extra, isn't it? Yeah. That was but that was recorded in your house, wasn't it? It was actually
where I am standing speaking here now. We had Squeeze playing and the Alabama 3.
Wow.
Comedians dotted around the house. It really was here.
You were doing this before it was actually necessary to do this. Yeah. So you were just out of choice.
That's right.
Yeah.
You look like you've got a silly hat on your head now.
Do I? This is it.
Yeah, it's like some sort of. It's like the Jewish hat, isn't it?
The downside of putting a screen behind me. It's like things I'm not even aware of. It's terrible.
We're getting lots of lovely messages now. Annette Helliwell said, "Thanks for brightening up my Friday evening," which is nice.
Annette, I hope you have a lovely morning too.
Yes.
and Phil from his iPad said, "Whirly, whirly, good."
Love it.
I think that's just a reference to the.
I think Phil's had a few.
Yeah, clearly.
You're good at it.
Thank you so much for doing this, Arthur, and also thank you for coming to Mostly Comedy as many times as you have. Because your voice is such a distinctive voice of comedy. When you first played Mostly, it was a real event for us.
Thank you for inviting me, and I hope that I'll be back there again soon and seeing people in the flesh.
Yes,
I look forward to it. Thank you so much, Arthur. Take care.
Thank you very much.
All right, cheers. Bye
bye. So that was the brilliant Arthur Smith.
Bloody wasn't all, and he is brilliant. He's such an easy person to talk to, and I mean, people who have stories about having had a meal with Arthur Miller. I mean, for God's sake, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, ridiculous. Exactly. It's crazy, wasn't it? And it's funny enough, I knew beforehand that he'd had met Robin Williams. But the fact that he wasn't even listed in the first sort of list he did, I was like, oh my God, how many how many huge people? And then when he said, to me, who have I met, you suddenly think, I can't think of anyone of any note particularly that's going to be
Arthur
worthy.
Smith.
I mean, him. I should have just said you, just you. But
I don't know, we've met a fair few people,
but we have.
It's like in that moment you panic and you can't think of anyone.
Well, you say you kind of I suppose now if I think, I still can't really. I mean,
just through Mostly.
This is it. Through a lot of it's through Mostly Comedy, or just generally through acting jobs or doing stuff in London. But a lot, it's difficult. I mean, I suppose your
wife did a play with John Altman, Nasty Nick. Nasty Nick. And we were in a very strange situation watching her having to kiss him. Was it kiss him?
Yeah.
Although he didn't he have a cold sore?
He had a cold sore, which I don't know. He'd want everyone to know that, but who cares?
Well, it just proves he's a real person. We all get the occasional herpes. There's not much you can do about that.
So he did a really awkward kiss, I seem to remember. But and just the fact that he was. I
never thought I'd see your wife kiss Nasty Nick.
Nasty Nick from EastEnders. I know, but I have to say, lovely bloke,
great kisser,
great kisser. Yeah, he did it for me as well afterwards, just to make me feel not so jealous.
The funny thing was, you had a cold sore, and then he had a cold sore.
I'm not saying anything, I'm
But
not speaking.
anyway.
But yeah, no, there's been people. I had in my head when we were talking to Arthur, he mentioned the famous people. Afterwards I thought, oh, I could have mentioned when I met David Beckham, and I was like, no, that would have been
I
so
didn't know you
rubbish.
met David Beckham.
Do you know? I met
Oh,
him.
hang on,
So
no, maybe.
so I met him. When I say met him, what I mean is I went to Luton Airport with a friend's family to see the England team go out to wherever it was they were going at that point to play some Euro or World Cup. I don't know football, so I don't know when it was. But all I remember is that I was a fan of the Spice Girls, as you know, and
You own a special commemorative edition of Spice World the movie, don't you?
In a tin.
In a tin.
Not just in a box, but in a special tin, limited edition tin. But I knew it. There was a rumor at the time that he was with Victoria Adams, who ended up being Victoria Beckham, of course. Yeah. And the only thing I wanted to know, and I said he came past, and everyone's going, David, oh, can you sign this? And I said, are you going out with Victoria Adams? That's the only thing I said to him. And he didn't. He just kind of smiled. And it was a rumor. It wasn't a fact. So, and I was like, he is. He really is. And so I feel like I kind of got the scoop. You know, I found out first just by the smile.
Didn't you write a letter to Victoria Beckham?
Let's not talk about that.
Okay, let's not talk.
Yeah, she never replied. I don't know if I sent it to the right address, but
she never does. What was the address? Victoria Beckham, Spice World.
Spice World. Yeah. the big Union Jack bus. I don't know. Yeah. That's what they drive around in. Yeah. That was So that was David Beckham.
Anyway, so back to the interview and the podcast.
That was good.
It was great, and it's nice to have Arthur as our first person for this way of doing the podcast because he's such a nice guy and an easy person to talk to, and it was a lot of fun.
It was.
So as Glenn said before, not before we started, because that would be weird, but while we were doing the intro before, we have lots of other episodes of More Than Mostly Comedy. We have our most recent one prior to this with Kate Robbins and Norman Lovett, which is available. If you obviously Google it, if you go to mostlycomedy.co.uk, if you go to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts and the rest, look up More Than Mostly Comedy. You'll find lots of episodes with lots of great people. Phil Jupitus, Catherine Ryan, John Thompson,
Paul Daniels,
Richard Herring, Debbie McGee, obviously with Paul Daniels. We didn't do
not separately. Yeah,
no, that'd be weird.
Yeah,
just coincidental. But listen to that, and we'll have another new one coming out very soon as well. So keep an eye out for that. Also, if you go to mostlycomedy.co.uk and join our mailing list, you could watch or listen in to the podcast as it happens. Send your own questions. Living the dream.
Yes, indeed. Be interactive, but join in with us, which was really great. And I have to say that was one of the fun bits of tonight was having people there listening to it with us and joining in. So.
Perhaps we could do I remember the first sort of interactive thing you ever saw like that was when they did like a scratch and sniff thing when they were doing Going Live or Live and Kicking. Do you remember that? And you got, I think it's with Fast Forward magazine, which I was a subscriber. You got a little card with all the smells and you had to scratch them at the key moment. Perhaps if you rub your armpit on a bit of card. Yeah. And I'll rub my armpit on a bit of card. Yeah. And we could send that. Let's not do that. That's a bad.
Let's not. And I remember with that as well. I do remember doing that, and everything just smelt the same.
It smells of slightly scented cardboard.
Yeah. It's nothing smells nice. Everything just smells the same. Is that what they're intending us to?
The name, scratch and sniff. It's the two grimmest words. They might just added the word moist in there as well, and then moist scratch and sniff. Horrible.
Yeah.
And gorgeous.
What a great word to end. What a great word to end the podcast on.
And moist scratch and sniff. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
And we hope to have your ears with us again sometime soon.
Yes.
See you next time, but we won't because we can't. But you'll hear us.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.